Hi everyone, this is Cody Smith. Welcome to my channel, Cody Smith, Peer Support with Christ. First off, I just want to say welcome to everyone and thank you for joining me. And I also want to let you know you can also find me on many other platforms like TikTok and Clapper, which is like an American version of TikTok for older adults, like those of us who are older, like Gen Y and Gen X, who can report more serious topics. It's like it's like the American version of TikTok. You could also find me on Instagram, and if you look in the description of my channel where it says more, you'll find the list of all my other links. You can also find me on Facebook, which I believe is there, and you can find a Google Meet link where you can meet with me personally at 5:30 on Tuesdays, 12:30 on Fridays, and 7 o'clock p.m. on Saturdays, where we have you know group meetings to chat about whatever we want, and this is all Eastern Standard Time. 5:30 Tuesdays Eastern Standard Time p.m. 12:30 p.m. Fridays Eastern Standard Time at 7 o'clock p.m. Saturdays Eastern Standard Time, because I'm also working as what's known as a peer support specialist, where I talk to people who are going through similar situations as me, helping them make plans as to how to get through it. And that's also the reason why I am writing my book, because I want to give you my life story of what I've been through as a person with a disability, so you can have a firsthand account and show you how that's also strengthened my faith in Christianity, and how disability itself serves as evidence for the existence of an all knowing, all loving, all powerful God, and the necessity for a sacrifice like the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ as described in the Bible. And right now, I'm working on chapter 2, where I'm kind of briefly going through my journey of faith, where I started out as a child attending the Southern Baptist Church in Rock Hill, South Carolina, where I live, and that is where I was first introduced to the faith. And I guess you could say I took it on blind faith at face value, not knowing any different, because no one had presented any evidence for or against Christianity to confirm or deny it. And I guess I just took it on blind faith. And I grew up that way, and I also grew up around Christian people. Like in middle school and high school, I had what was known as a student assistant who helped me, which is someone who's supposed to help students with disabilities, you know, navigate school. And in my case, she acted as my hands to where I would mentally do the work, but she would physically put it on paper and help me transport my stuff throughout school from class to class and those sorts of things. And, she treated me like I was her own son. So that was a good thing. And also, you know, I get briefly into, once I got to college, I was introduced to a Bible study group on campus, which I went to and I had a lot of fun. I was introduced to it through a friend of mine that I met on campus. And then this other group came to us to do a presentation, which they were the ones who studied the Bible and looked for extra biblical evidence as proof for the truth claims of Christianity. Looking outside the Bible at the external universe to see does it, verify the truth claims of Christianity. And then about a year later, the leaders of my campus chapter saw me on, saw me walking down the street and they invited me to come to their group. And I did, and I immediately fell in love with it and decided to keep coming. And it was so much fun because, being able to learn things that I had never known before and seeing that there is evidence out there for Christianity. Because if you really look at it, if there's something here, where did it come from and who put it here and why? And with us as humans having our DNA code, DNA is a code because it has the bases that form, the code itself. And then with each person, we have our own code that is a combination of our parents and the way that code is arranged, determines how we turn out. And that means there has to be, if you go back far enough, there has to be an original genetic code from our original beginning parents. And therefore, if they as humans had an original genetic code, there had to be an external coder with the intelligence to make such a code for them. And by default, that coder cannot be human, but has to have intelligence, power, authority, exist outside of the physical universe, and, you know, know the difference between what makes a human, a cow, a pig, a horse, a donkey, and those sorts of things. And also, we would have to have the authority to decide, what characteristics we get, such as free will, the ability to speak, the ability to plan, create, and decide, and those sorts of things. And that is what has led me to realize, okay, if I have a disability, there has to be a standard of health in order to distinguish having a disability from someone who's perfectly healthy, someone who's just injured, someone who's just sick, and things like that, and distinguish between all of those things. So there has to be a minimum line that says if you meet this minimum mark, then you're perfectly healthy. If you fall beneath it, then you're not. And depending on how you fall beneath it, that determines injury from sickness and disability. And then, within disability, there's differences that determine which disability you have and its level of severity and its effects on you. And yes, we as humans know what those are, but we didn't invent them. So there has to be an outside standard setter that maybe didn't cause them but knows the differences and set the differences. And there had to be some catastrophic event that set in motion that fall from perfect health to where we are now, and sin and disobedience from God would be the perfect initiating event, because sin is disobedience, whether willfully or unintentionally, from God's standard of perfection. And if we disobeyed, then we suffer the consequences. And the breakdown of humanity and the universe would be the perfect starting point from which disability could begin, as described in Scripture. And that is what makes me feel that disability is evidence for Christianity. And that is what I'm going through right now in my book. I'm telling my own story little by little, piece by piece, how I feel that that is evidence for Christianity. I'm also trying to show you that, my story, someone with a disability, is really no different than anybody else's life story. And the fact that I'm still fully human, my circumstances are just different than yours. And, I handle these circumstances differently than you do, because I look at these circumstances through my own eyes. I have my own free will to choose how to deal with it. And I, work and figure out, okay, what works best for me personally, and that's how I'm going to handle things. Because we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, no matter what situation we're in, who we are, or anything. And, no one should be ostracized or put down or cast into the shadows or belittled just because of a situation that they're in, or a circumstance that's been placed on them that they had no say in or control over. And that is exactly what I'm trying to ultimately get across by sharing my story, because having a disability is not something that we need to be shamed, that we should be shamed for or ashamed of, because yeah, it has negative effects on us. And therein again lies, evidence for God, because how would we know that these effects are negative effects and harmful if we don't have a standard of what perfect health is and being fully healthy is? And where would that standard come from? Because every standard needs a standard setter. And if this standard affects humans, then mainly only humans, and that standard setter would have to know, before we even exist, what the standard will be before we're even made, and would have to make us with that standard in mind. Therefore, by default, that standard setter would have to pre exist us and cannot be human itself. And that is something I'm really trying to stress in this chapter. And I welcome all questions and comments. Please feel free to reach out, like, share, subscribe, and let me know what you think. And I'll also be willing to discuss this further in other video topics if there's a question you would like me to make a video on. And again, you could also reach me at all of my other social media, which you will find in the description of my channel. If you click the More button, and you can also um, find all of that and find me on Google Meet as well, where you can meet me at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesdays Eastern Standard Time, 12:30 p.m. on Fridays Eastern Standard Time. 7 o'clock p.m. on Saturdays, Eastern Standard Time, where you can join me for a meeting and we can meet face to face and chat face to face. And we do different topics, such as, like right now, I'm going through the rules and regulations for being a peer support specialist because that is what I'm trained in. I'm trying to help people with disabilities be able to get what they want because as people with disabilities, that's what we ultimately are, people who possess disabilities. Therefore, we deserve, everything that every other human being in the world is given, especially our independence and freedom to make our own choices and live our own lives on our own terms because we should be treated as equals, not as a lesser class. Neither should anyone else for something that is beyond their control, whether that is their skin tone, ethnicity, age, anything that you can think of. I don't care. We should all be treated as equals because we are equals. Because there is an external, all powerful, all knowing, all loving God who created all humans with the same characteristics in the same image, then He decides our value and decides, what makes us what we are and how valuable we are, and that value extends to all humans equally, no matter what our personal circumstances are: rich, poor, disabled, sick, diseased, tall, short, thin, fat. It doesn't matter. We're all the same, so we should all be treated that way and be looked at that way. And, we should all be working together as a single team in order to make things better, not only for ourselves, but for each other. That is why I'm trying to share my story because I believe we should all share our stories with each other and try to get to know each other, even though we cannot all individually get to know every other individual on the face of the earth. We should try to really get to know each other before rushing to judgment because there may be something that somebody's going through that I've been through or that somebody else has been through, and they can help that person get through it. And that's exactly what a peer support specialist does because I've gone through life with a disability and I've done things that I've wanted to do and I'm still working on doing things that I want to do. So that is why I want to be a peer support specialist so I can help people with disabilities realize their dreams and get what they want and what they deserve, which is ultimately we all deserve our independence and freedom no matter who we are, disabled or not, so that we can live the lives that we want and live our lives to the fullest extent possible so that we can contribute to society to the fullest extent possible, even if it's not dollar for dollar equal for everybody. We could all contribute our fair share and we could all help each other and be there for each other and be a single human unit and team, which is what I'm ultimately trying to get at. And I don't mean to sit here and rant, I'm just trying to tell you the truth. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. I will see you Thursday for another video. Please feel free to leave questions, comments, and video topic ideas because I want this to be as conversational as possible. And don't hesitate to let me know of anything you'd like me to address, either in a video on any of my social media or in my book. Thanks, everyone. See you Thursday for another video, and see you next Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a another live stream. Bye, everyone.